Picture this for a moment. Your whole life plays out like a movie. You've spent years rehearsing your lines, practicing that soft, shy smile in the mirror, and carefully selecting everyone around you so they match the image of a leading lady. Then you land the role of a lifetime, not just a Hollywood star, but an actual duchess. You've got the castle, the prince, and a worldwide platform. But then someone from the opening act, to the man who knew you before the filters, before the titles, before the humanitarian rebrand, decides he's done sticking to your script. For more than a decade, Trevor Engelson has been the quiet observer of Meghan Markle's rise. He saw her transformation from a briefcase model on a game show into one of the most talked about women in the world. Through the interviews, the Netflix series, and the recurring woe is me narrative, he stayed silent. But ghosts don't stay invisible forever. They eventually step into view. And what Trevor is now rumored to be revealing isn't just a different perspective. It feels like a completely different story altogether. This is about the middleman, the FedEx divorce, and a shocking revelation that could shake the entire Sussex narrative. To understand how things got here, we have to rewind to the version of Meghan that wasn't meant for public view. Before she became the Duchess of Sussex, she was married to Trevor Engelson. He wasn't just her partner, he was her foundation. A successful Hollywood producer, Trevor provided the stability and connections a struggling actress needed to survive in an industry known for chewing people. Their 2011 wedding in Jamaica was meant to mark the rise of a Hollywood power couple, a 4-day sunlit celebration with around 100 close friends. But even back then, there were hints of what was to come. Guests would later describe a bride who seemed intensely focused on control, someone who orchestrated every detail for maximum a cool girl effect, and who appeared to treat the event as much as a networking opportunity as a romantic milestone. Then everything shifted when Meghan landed her role on Suits and relocated to Toronto. Suddenly, Trevor, the LA producer, was no longer the lead in her story. He became a background figure, gradually written out in a way that felt abrupt and harsh. The end of their marriage stands out as a major crack in the polished to compassionate Duchess image. Most people, even in Hollywood, manage a conversation when things fall apart. But according to those close to Trevor, he was caught completely off guard when a FedEx package arrived containing her engagement and wedding rings. No call, no meeting, just a detached, almost clinical return. It didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like a transaction. She had already gained what she needed: connections, stability, the social boost of being married to a producer. And once she found success on her own, he no longer fit into the narrative. While Trevor stayed behind in LA dealing with the aftermath, Meghan had already set her sights on a bigger stage, and that next stage wasn't just another Hollywood opportunity. It was the British royal family. That leads into what some have dubbed the vision board theory, which has stirred intense debate among royal watchers. In that well-known engagement interview, Meghan claimed she didn't know much about Prince Harry. For anyone raised in the 90s, that statement can sound hard to believe. Former friends, including Night Nucky Pretty, have shared accounts of a younger Meghan who was deeply fascinated by the royal family. According to them, it went beyond casual interest. She reportedly kept books about Princess Diana and even created vision boards that looked less like teenage dreams and more like long-term ambitions. Some believe she had been studying Diana's public persona for years. The signature head tilt, the shy glances, the carefully expressed vulnerability that made Diana so beloved worldwide. By the time Meghan met Prince Harry at Soho House, the narrative suggests she wasn't simply going on a blind date. She was stepping into a role she had been preparing for over time. She seemed to understand which emotions to highlight, which struggles to share, and how to connect in a way that resonated deeply. But according to ongoing speculation, there may be an even more complex layer beneath all of this. One that's now drawing renewed attention as discussions move closer to those once considered part of the inner circle. Trevor, as the man who shared her life during those early struggling actor years, would likely know the reality behind certain claims that have circulated, particularly those involving an alleged medical procedure in her early 20s. If the hysterectomy rumors were ever proven true, the implications wouldn't just be personal. They would extend into questions people raise about royal traditions. And in the British monarchy, succession rules historically emphasize being a born of the body, which is why some online theories, like those involving surrogacy, often tied to the widely discussed moon bump eclipse, have gained traction in certain corners of the internet. For years, people who questioned aspects of Meghan's pregnancies were broadly dismissed as conspiracy-driven or unreliable. They pointed to clips where her baby bump appeared to shift shape or position, or moments that seemed unusual to them physically. These interpretations, however, have never been verified and are widely rejected by credible sources. Still, speculation persists in some spaces, and narratives like the ones allegedly tied to Trevor's perspective are often framed as adding fuel to those debates. From that viewpoint, the suggestion becomes less about personal milestones and more about strategy, framing major life events as carefully managed public moments designed to reinforce a broader image or brand identity. Whether accurate or not, that's how some critics interpret it. Then there's the discussion around performance and public emotion. An old clip often referenced shows Meghan Georgian believes your acting ability, specifically the idea of producing tears on cue. It's a common technique in acting, meant to convey emotion convincingly. Later appearances, like the well-known interview with Oprah Winfrey or moments in documentaries, are sometimes viewed through that same lens by critics, who question whether emotional displays are entirely spontaneous or partially performative. To supporters, those moments reflect genuine vulnerability. To skeptics, they may appear more calculated. That difference in interpretation is at the heart of the broader divide in how she's perceived publicly. Within royal circles, reports over time have suggested tensions behind the scenes. Some palace staff, many of whom had long-standing careers serving the monarchy, were described in media reports as finding her management style difficult. Terms like a demanding or a challenging have appeared in coverage, though these accounts are often disputed and remain one-sided without direct verification. Critics describe a pattern where relationships seem to fade once they no longer align with a particular direction or public image. Names often brought up in that context include her father, Thomas Markle, her former friend Nainaki Pretty, and past professional connections. Supporters, however, argue that distancing from people can also reflect personal boundaries, changing circumstances, or the pressures of public life. What stands out is how sharply divided the narrative has become. On one side, she's seen as a humanitarian figure navigating intense scrutiny. On the other, critics portray a much more strategic and image-conscious personality. As discussions continue into 2026, more voices, especially from people connected to earlier chapters of her life, are being referenced in media and online conversation. These accounts don't always align with the carefully curated public image, and that contrast is what keeps the story evolving. The irony, as some observers point out, is that much of the public narrative from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has centered around their truth yet challenging misinformation. At the same time, critics argue that controlling public perception through interviews, documentaries, and media strategy has played a major role in shaping how their story is told. Trevor has clearly moved forward with his life. He's built a solid career and started a new family, far removed from the spotlight surrounding his past. He doesn't rely on fame or financial ties connected to Meghan anymore. And that independence is exactly what, in this narrative, makes him such a significant figure. The idea is that someone with nothing to gain or lose is more likely to speak openly, if they choose to. Looking back at the Sussex's time in the UK and their eventual move to California, some critics frame it not as an escape from pressure, but as a calculated transition toward a global stage. From that perspective, California offered the environment where Meghan could fully step into a celebrity-driven platform she had long aimed for, but maintaining that level of stardom depends heavily on public trust. As more critical narratives circulate, ranging from questions about authenticity to interpretations of past events, some observers argue that public confidence has become more divided. Where supporters see resilience and reinvention, critics see strategy and image management. In this version of events, the intermediary angle suggests Trevor may eventually share his perspective more directly. The framing here paints him not as a distant observer, but as someone who witnessed earlier chapters firsthand, someone who saw ambitions forming, personal habits developing, and private realities before they became public narratives. Whether or not he ever speaks publicly in detail remains uncertain, but the speculation itself continues to fuel discussion. The central claim from critics is that if such firsthand accounts ever emerged, they could challenge the carefully constructed public image. For someone whose public identity has been closely managed, that possibility alone is seen as significant. There's also a broader critique about performance and presentation. Observers often revisit footage from royal appearances, interpreting gestures, expressions, and body language in different ways. Supporters view these as natural responses under intense scrutiny, while critics interpret them as rehearsed or influenced by acting experience. These opposing readings highlight just how subjective public perception can be. Similarly, moments like the widely discussed A Secret Wedding Acclaim, which was later clarified by the Archbishop of Canterbury, are often cited by critics as examples of narrative inconsistencies. Supporters, on the other hand, tend to view such moments as misunderstandings or misstatements rather than intentional misdirection. What becomes clear is that every action is filtered through two very different lenses. One sympathetic, one skeptical. For years, most of the widely shared narrative has come from Meghan's own interviews and projects, alongside coverage involving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Now, the possibility of alternative perspectives, especially from people connected to her earlier life, adds another layer to the ongoing conversation. At its core, this isn't just about celebrity gossip. It's about how public figures shape their stories and how those stories are received. Questions naturally follow. How much of any public narrative is carefully curated? How much is shaped by media interpretation? And how much is simply the complexity of real life playing out under extraordinary scrutiny? The mention of videos like the so-called moon bump clips continues to circulate in online spaces, though these claims remain unverified and widely disputed. Still, they illustrate how powerful visual moments can become when combined with speculation. In the end, what's unfolding is less about definitive answers and more about competing narratives. As more voices, credible or otherwise, enter the discussion, audiences are left to sort through conflicting interpretations and decide what they find believable. There's that widely circulated clip, the one where she's dancing while reportedly pregnant with Lilibet, where some viewers claim the bump appears to move independently of her body. For years, skeptics pointed to it as evidence, while supporters dismissed it as nothing more than a baseless conspiracy. But in this narrative, if someone as close as a former spouse were to support those claims, it would completely shift how that footage is interpreted in certain circles. From that perspective, what was once brushed off as speculation becomes, for critics, something far more serious. An argument that key moments in her public life were carefully constructed. They frame it as a level of calculated image building that goes beyond normal celebrity branding. However, it's important to note that these claims remain unverified and widely disputed. Supporters of Meghan Markle strongly reject these interpretations, viewing them as harmful speculation rather than credible evidence. Another argument raised by critics revolves around timing, specifically how major announcements seem to align with periods of negative press. In that framing, moments like pregnancy news are seen not just as personal milestones, but as strategic resets for public perception. Supporters, on the other hand, see this as coincidence or simply the reality of living under constant media scrutiny, where any major life event becomes headline news. The broader claim here is about a pattern. When faced with criticism, shifting the narrative through positive or emotional storytelling. Critics interpret this as calculated rebranding, while others see it as resilience and media awareness in a highly controlled environment. Then there's the transition to California. Leaving royal life behind, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry stepped into a different world, one centered around media, influence, and global visibility. For some, this move represented freedom and independence. For others, it reinforced the idea of a long-term plan to build a powerful personal brand. In entertainment circles, reactions remain mixed. Some admire the ambition and reinvention, while others question the authenticity behind. Media commentary from personalities like Megyn Kelly and various online creators continues to highlight both support and skepticism, reflecting just how polarized the conversation has become. At its core, the debate comes down to trust. Can a public figure maintain credibility when their story evolves over time? Critics argue that inconsistencies weaken the narrative, while supporters point out that growth, pressure, and media distortion can all shape how stories are told. The idea that Trevor Engelson might eventually speak out is often framed as a potential turning point. In this narrative, his perspective is seen as uniquely significant because of his proximity to Meghan before her rise to global prominence. Whether or not he ever publicly shares detailed claims, the speculation alone adds tension to the broader story. Still, it's crucial to separate speculation from verified fact. Many of the more serious allegations, especially those involving pregnancies or medical history, have no confirmed evidence and remain in the realm of rumor. What remains undeniable is how divided public opinion is. Some people see Meghan as someone who faced intense scrutiny and carved out her own path despite it. Others view her as highly strategic, shaping every chapter of her life with precision. So the real question becomes less about proving one narrative, right or wrong, and more about how people interpret what they see. Was her journey shaped by circumstance or by careful planning? Are emotional moments genuine or influenced by media awareness? Is the public witnessing authenticity or performance? Those answers depend entirely on perspective. And that's why the conversation keeps going.